Guten Morgen. Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back. Happy Monday, everybody. Before we dive on into this, do me a favor, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Turn on the notification button as well. But let's go ahead and dive on into this. If you don't know, for June, I'm a crab for Bitcoin and Ethereum and a bear for the rest. And what I mean by crab, I mean I could see us going under 100K. I could see us going up to not a new all-time high for the month of June. Hanging around there. A little under 100K. Over up to 110, something like that, and that we're just going to chop for a little bit while altcoins bleed. I think Ethereum is going to chop for a little bit as well. And so there's lots of reasons why, from a fundamental perspective and a technical perspective, that is my mindset right now. And if I'm proven wrong, hallelujah. But there's certain things that I see. And so here's the more fundamental side of this. And listen, guys, I am most likely going to flip my perspective for the remainder of the year to being a bull, and we'll see what 2026 brings us. But for Bitcoin, at least, it makes sense to be bullish right now, especially seeing where the stock market is. And so, but okay, what are we seeing here from Glassnode? Bitcoin long-term holders are slowly selling, and with no strong upside catalyst, the risk of a short-term correction grows. On-chain models show key support zones at the 0.95 SSD quantile at 103.7K and 0.85 at 95.6K levels to watch if profit taking continues. And so it makes sense. Bitcoin's over $100,000. It makes sense for long-term holders. People who've been holding Bitcoin for several years. They're up big in Bitcoin. That of course they're gonna distribute at least. They're not gonna dump their entire bags, absolutely not. But they're going to distribute, and especially with a mindset of like it's the summer in the northern hemisphere months, June, July. We're not going to see major catalysts for significant upward movement. Anything can happen, I know, but this is my perspective as to what we're facing right now. So could we get down to 95.6K? Over the next month and a half, who knows? Maybe not even that long. I think it's a possibility for Bitcoin, and it's okay. There's going to be opportunities to buy cryptos at good prices if we get that. And I'm sorry if you want your Lambo now. That's just not how this works. And so what would that look like? Well, decode here. I've been talking about an ABC correction. It might be something like this. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw something like this where we're at that move down to under $100,000, I'm thinking was the bottom of this A wave in terms of an ABC correction. And B would take us in this particular case up to 106.5, 107. I know on Friday we got to 105.3, something like that. I do wonder if that's kind of like a Friday peak, and maybe early this week we'll see 106, 107, something like that. That would be the peak of the B. And then a bottoming out at a C, an ABC correction. And where does he have it on this chart? Wouldn't you know it? 96.5. So what was that number from Glassnode? 95.6. It's pretty close. Maybe a wick below this level. The 200-day moving average is right at about there. Would make sense, in my opinion, to bounce off that 200-day moving average. And then we'll see where we go from there. But Bitcoin, I really don't see a reason to be all that bearish on Bitcoin. I highly doubt that we're going back down to 75,000 in the short term. So hold tight. We'll make it through this. If you're overexposed, as always, it's a good idea to de-risk. But let's moving on. So Glassnode again. If accumulation is rising, why is Bitcoin still declining? So I've shared with you charts, especially from Glassnode. Every cohort of holder is accumulating right now. But why is the price not just going crazy? Well, that's what happens during accumulation, is we just either chop and maybe even go down because it doesn't matter if all the cohorts from shrimps to whales are generally buying. There are certain groups of people who are still profit taking. If accumulation is rising, why is Bitcoin still declining? Because while distribution has slowed and accumulation is returning, it hasn't been enough to offset the pressure from profit taking, again, by older holders. And what can we see here? The accumulation trend score shows most wallet cohorts shifting from strong distribution toward modest buying. Every coin sold still finds a buyer, but the recent sell-off side was dominated by 1+ year holders sitting on sizable profits and willing to exit even at a discount. And so you can see this in comparison to 2021. There was some heavy profit taking from all cohorts at that first peak in 2021. Less profit taking, but still not insignificant from older cohorts in the second peak of 2021. We have kind of a 3-peak structure here with 2024 and 2025, some pretty heavy profit taking with Bitcoin at 74,000, 73,000, some much heavier profit taking at 100 and change thousand, and here we are back to 100+ thousand, and not as much profit taking because there's a lot of profit taking back in December. And so we need to navigate our way through this and see a move on down in these older coins taking profit so that we can accumulate more and gear up for another move higher. So it is what it is. It's okay. It's actually very good. Now, a cohort that is not selling is the miners, Bitcoin miners. And this is really the first time throughout this bull run, throughout the entire bull market, that we have seen miners not really doing much of anything. And so what do we see here? The red part is high miner sell pressure. The green part is low miner sell pressure. The miners are not selling all that much. And so that's a good sign. So this metric calculates the total Bitcoin outflows from miners over the past 30 days and compares it to the moving average of their reserves during the same period. They are not selling, so it would make sense for this dip that we're seeing right here to not be as long as the dip that we saw in early 2025. A reply from Axel Adler here. The current HODL level on the network is at the highest point in the past 2 years. Another compelling reason to think that perhaps we're not going to go all that much lower from here. Axel, what does HODL stand for? Oh, hey, there's this thing called Google. All right, Google. Hey, why don't you Google the word the letters HODL? Something interesting that I found, at least on-chain college yesterday being Thursday. So this is a tweet from June 6th, but Thursday saw a similar amount of long liquidations as early April when the price dropped from 83,000 to 74,000 right before Bitcoin went on to make new all-time highs. So some pretty heavy long liquidations. We had that Twitter beef, whatever, between Musk and Trump. And that, what kind of a catalyst was that? I think we were due for this liquidation, and that just kind of helped ease it along. And so pretty high long liquidations. I mean, every time you can see long liquidations on this chart, you can see that Bitcoin's price didn't go all that much lower after these pretty heavy long liquidations. So what do we get from here? Again, not all that bearish at all. So, hey, global M2, ignore the noise. Quentin.eth taking Julian Battelle and Raul Pal's chart, Ignore the noise and be patient. Ignore the noise and be patient. So we, of course, global M2. So where do we go from here? Apparently, we still have not deviated from this. We'll see. I hope. This is absolute best case scenario. I do hope that we do continue to follow along with global M2, 12-week lead. All right. We'll see. At some point we are going to deviate from this chart. And this is not M2, but just some perspective here. Global liquidity turns negative again. Now, there's a difference between M2 and liquidity, but this is not something to ignore. While we pumped, is this another 12-week indicator where this big green patch right here preceded that big pump in November, December? This big green patch right here preceded that big pump in from January to March of 2024. So we have a couple big green patches here, and maybe this big green patch from earlier this year preceded the big pump, and this smaller green patch is going to precede another big pump. But hey, you know what? As of right now, in this moment, global net liquidity is negative. And what do we make of that? I mean, let's zoom out a little bit. I would just say I prefer technicals over something like this. All right. This isn't really something that I pay attention to. Oh my goodness. Look at 2021. So I'm just noticing COVID. Isn't that funny? You know, after the COVID crash, all that net liquidity that changed, and look at what preceded it. So you want to call this a forward-looking indicator, then we should be pretty good short term, and then we'll see how long we are in the net negative. But anyway, something I thought would be of interest. Moving on, we have Ethereum, so Bitcoin Data 21, very bullish. A very bullish account. I like his content. So here's a fractal. And what this fractal is showing is, we had this tight range that Ethereum was hanging around in around $1,800, $1,900, and then we broke that to the upside, and then now we're in another tight range. And so if the fractal is the same, we're going to break this to the upside, right? And then we're going to go to $4,600. That doesn't sound right. I was thinking more like 3,000 or 3,300 or something like that. But, I would love to be wrong, and let's hope that Bitcoin Data 21 laid the fractal right. But Ethereum has been compressing, just like April, May before it broke to the upside. Yellow fractal applied an enlarged fractal of April, May in gray. We can be hopeful. I suppose. Comment from FOMO meter here. I tend to agree with this. Fractals don't predict price. They recycle belief. The more perfect the pattern, the more retail thinks it's safe. That's when it's not. That would be my mindset with the M2 stuff, seeing all those M2 money supply charts. Another reason why I'm flipping perhaps bullish until the end of the year, the recession is close, but not there yet. Guilherme Tavares, we're not quite there. Unemployment. What do we say about unemployment in the United States? Unemployment is increasing, but it's inching higher. It's not exploding. It's just going a little bit higher day by day, month by month, whatever you want to call it. And when's the cause for alarm? I mean, really, when we go below 100K. Below 100K can be considered a powerful indicator for recessions. So maybe the end of 2025, we're going to rally into 2025, 2026, something like that. But at some point, as always, the crows will come home to roost. And so keep an eye on that. 100K, is that the magic number? I don't know. Last post here, Arizona iced tea. Arizona is still 99 cents. That's pretty wild to me that Arizona is 99 cents. But my goodness. All right, hash brown's $4.15. Now, I not at my McDonald's, but I have been pretty annoyed at the price of hash browns at McDonald's. Like, I get a coffee and a hash brown, I'm paying more than $5. I remember when I was in high school, I got a meal for $5. I got like Subway. I got a Subway meal for $5. That's a sub, 6-inch sub, chips and a drink for $5. And then, they had their $5. I'm paying $4.15 for a hash brown. But thank you, Arizona Tea. Thank you. I think my future, maybe when I go broke and start working at McDonald's, is I'll be not eating McDonald's unless it's my shift. I get my free food during the shift. And then I'll be going and getting some Arizona iced teas and then heading off over to Costco and getting my $1.50 hot dog. And maybe that's going to be my meal, my regular meal. So interesting. I saw a reply here that I found kind of interesting here. So what do we have here? That's ridiculous. You can buy Season's Choice hash brown patties, 20 count for $4.39. Yeah, I think hash browns at McDonald's are a little overpriced. But sign of the times, baby. It's only going to get worse. It will never get better. And literally, I'm dead serious. I mean, in terms of the dollar valuations of these products, my goodness. So what you going to do other than flee into hard money. I don't know. But anyway, that's all I have for today. I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful rest of your week, and I will most certainly be seeing you in another video.